Hey, good morning, everybody. All right, so this is my third attempt making this video. Talk about frustrating. All right, Premier Rush. I'm new to this, so I'm struggling. So today, we're going to be talking about Ranger beads. All right. Now, I want to add to this right at the beginning. If you have a bunch of scrap pieces of 550 cord, like me, Ranger beads are a great way to use them. Even if you have like a piece that is too small, really, to make a whole set, join two pieces together. You know, contrast the colors like I did here. Simple square knot, join them, then burn them. As you see there, burn it nice and tight. Slide it all the way down both sides. Two little scrap pieces of 550 cord. Cool little addition to your gear bag or your web gear, whatever, wherever you want to use it. All right, so first, before we get into what Ranger beads are and how to use them, you need to learn how to establish your pace count. All right, so you can use meters or yards for this. For me, I'm going to be using meters. That's how I was taught. That's how we're going to roll. But I do have this little piece of paper. Got 100 meters or 100 yards, whichever you want to use. All right, so between point A and point B, what you need to do is mark out your 100 meters, like football field, a park. Get it exactly 100, all right? Now, what you do when you start at point A, you start walking to point B. Every time your left foot hits the ground, you count 1, 2, 3, you know what I mean? And by the time you get to point B, however many times your left foot hit the ground is roughly your pace count. But to get a better average, because type of terrain, steep terrain, rocky terrain, lots of trees you got to walk around, it'll kind of throw off your pace count a little bit. So once you get real experienced at this, you would know that if you're really striding it out more than normal, your pace count's going to be lower. If you're walking really steep, crazy terrain, your pace count's going to go higher. Mine range between like 60 and 64 roughly. And I kind of knew how to adjust. If I got off course a little bit, I always picked a target up ahead of me that I could realign myself back with to stay on the azimuth I was traveling. We're not going to worry about that today. We're going to talk about land navigation and terrain association and all that later on. We are just discussing pace count and Ranger beads. So let's say it took you 60 times of your left foot hitting the ground between A and B, right? Well, you want to do it at least 3 times and then average it together. So say you did it once, it was 60, another time it was 61, another time it was 62. Your average is going to be 61. Okay? Too easy, probably. All right. So if you do it 3 to 5 times and then you average out, we're just going to use 60 today. Good even number. It works. All right. So now you've established your pace count, which I will show you in further detail later on down the road how to do the pace count, but I figure that's pretty good explanation. And I'm going to try to explain this to where like the everyman can understand it as well, not just in like a military context. You know, you can play games with your friends like, all right, from this point facing whatever direction, you know, I hid something under a tree stump that's 600 yards or 600 meters up the mountain. You know what I mean? And see if they can, just using their pace count, kind of judge that distance and get to the location you're talking about. You know, you could do a lot of things with Ranger beads. It's pretty neat. If you don't want to make Ranger beads and you don't want to use Ranger beads, which I used to take them into the field with me in my pocket, and I never used them. And I'll tell you why. Because I used rocks. I did the same thing you could do with the beads, you know, but with rocks. So if I knew I was going from point A to point B and it was 700 meters away exactly, I'd pick up 7 rocks. I'd do my pace count. Every time I hit 100 meters, I'd throw a rock out. Another 100, throw another rock out. When you run out of rocks, you're probably pretty damn close to the location. that you're meant to be. All right. And we'll discuss more of that down the road. So on the beads, each one of these bottom 9 beads represents 100 meters or yards, if that's what you're using. So say your pace count is 60. Every time your left foot hits the ground 60 times, you've gone 100 meters. All right. Now, there's only 9 of these, and I'll tell you why. All right. So say you've gone 900 meters. You count through your paces again, you hit 1,000. The top 4 beads here represent 1,000. So you would slide one of those down. All right. And that represents you've gone 1,000 meters. Well, let's say you had to go 1,500 meters, right? So once you hit your 1,000, you would, you know, pace it out again, another 100, another 100, another 100, another 100, another 100. So that represents 1,500 meters, right? It's too easy. Too easy, right? I mean, like I said, you could do this with rocks. Just put, if you want to do it exactly like this, you would need to put some rocks over in this pocket. You need to put rocks in this pocket. But what I just did, I did it from point to point. If I didn't have any rocks laying on the ground when it was time to move out to the next point, you could take a tough piece of grass or a little twig and cut segments in it. Kind of like a candy bar's perforated, so you could snap it apart in even amounts. You could basically do the same thing with a stick if you got a knife on you. So every time you go your 100, you break one off, and when you're out of segments, you're where you need to be. All right, pretty cut and dry. Now, I'm going to just run over real quick how to make these. It's really easy. Some people will gut the 550 cord, right, and use 2 pieces of 550 cord, burn them out the end, twist it, get a nice point on it to where you could actually slide it in one of these beads. You got to keep in mind, unless you're buying some extra large beads or you're making your own out of wood, which is pretty cool. I might do the same thing. You got to work with what the dollar store, Walmart, or your local craft store, wherever, you're at their mercy. And pretty small. And some of this 550 cord, especially this red and black right here, the outer shell is super tough, super thick compared to the more supple black and orange I've been using. Now, I have a lot of scrap for making bracelets and stuff with the old lady. I even made her a pair. That's what the video was yesterday. She came down, she was like, oh, I'd like to have a set, because she's got a go bag as well. So I made her a really cool one. I don't have them down here, but I made a video, but it's not going to be that detailed today because I'm getting frustrated. All right. So if you're using some scrap pieces, I just do a little, what I call a hitch. I know some knots, but I'm not like a knot expert. I know what gets me by, but that's something I'm going to study in my own time, and I will also share with you guys. All right, so I do what I call like a hitch. Now, I'm a stickler for, if I tie a knot, I like it to be dressed up. You could see that none of these are crisscrossing or overlapping. It's nice and clean, and that's how we had to do it when we were tested out on knots and stuff. All right, you got to make sure it's dressed up, nice and pretty, nice and proper. That's how the knot's meant to be, right? So then you come down. If you're going to join 2 pieces together, I just did a simple square knot, like a joining knot, and then I torqued it down real hard on both sides. Then I snip off the other ends, leaving about an 1/8 inch. All right, you don't want too much, because then you're going to have a big glob. But an 1/8 inch will leave you a nice little melted flat patch, and it don't turn black if you do it right. But you just melt it up. Then use, let me see, do I have a lighter on me? Yes, I do. All right, so you would burn it. When you see the center white strand starting to bubble a little bit and everything is melded together, you take the end of your lighter here where it's flat and concaved and just kind of roll it on there. Press it on, let it cool, peels right off, nice and clean. You know what I mean? There's no big knot here. Same thing at the bottom, just a square knot, burnt. All right, so here's how you wear them. All right. A lot of people keep them clipped to their bag or their person. And when it's go time, it's time to walk out, they'll hold them in their hand. But there's a little trick if you are close to any pine trees. All right, because sometimes, especially if you're a military guy or girl, you're going to have your rifle. You're going to have your pack. You got your compass, especially if you're the one out front, leading the way, shooting the azimuth, getting it done. You've got your rifle, which if you got a 1-point sling, it frees up your hands. But me, I don't know, man. I'm like OCD about shit. I come up with this idea how these can work, and you can leave them on your person. And just, because if you're not careful, all right, say you pull one of these down, see how these slid a little bit? Well, I'm gonna show you a little trick of how to do that. And all you need is a pine tree with a little bit of sap. All you gotta do is find some sap, get it in your fingers, rub it down your line, pull your beads down, get the top part of the line, and then it's very like you could just feel it. Very satisfying when you pull it down because it's kind of tough and sticking, and your beads stay in place. That way you can put it right on one of your carabiners, your molly gear, and you could still have your rifle if you want to carry your rifle. It just depends. It's on the situation. Situational dependent, we'll say. But it's a neat little trick. And I like it even if I'm carrying them in my hand. I like the stoutness of actually having to use a little force to pull them down. So if you don't have pine tree or any sap of any sort, get you one of these little tea light unscented candles. And what you would do is you lay it down on a tough surface. Let me lean you in here. And then you would just rub that wax all over it. Make sure it's unscented, because if you're going for stealth, you don't want to smell like a frickin' cinnamon bun or cucumber melon walking down the trail. All right, but coat her down real good in wax, and it gives it that little bit of resistance when you pull them down. You know what I mean? You could actually feel it, and I like that. That pretty much covers it. These ones right here, I actually use glow-in-the-dark skull beads because I just thought it looked pretty sick. And like I said, I don't use these a lot, but I have them. It's not really a way to measure distance. It kind of helps you keep track of a rough estimate of your distance. However, it's all dependent on the person. So if you have your pace count down and you know how to adjust your pace count, you're basically a measuring device at that point in time. Yeah, after you just practice a little bit and you understand how the pace count works. It's real easy to do on flat ground. But once you get like in the hills, back around where I live, up here in West Virginia, the terrain is very unforgiving in spots. Sometimes you're heading in a straight line direction, trying to get to a point, and then you're faced with a big giant, like 3-4 story rock wall. All right? So if you're planning on going a direction, like if you were looking at a map, like I want to get up here and I'm going to be starting here, I need to go this way. And then like you just encounter more shit after more shit that's totally in your way and you got to go around. All right. That's when your pace count is going to be hit or miss. All right. Cause you got to compensate and all that, but practice it. It's a cool, it's a cool little trick to know, and I hope you enjoyed this video. All right, y'all. Peace.